Oh God, it's so exciting. Happy Hail Bob Day.
It is a happy Hail Bob Day.
Hello, the Curse of Dam.
It's the best finishing score we've seen at 5-star level.
That was our elo coming into the competition.
A venting manager is back.
Best show that we have, Alphabetti Spaghetti.
Looking forward to seeing quality horses.
Still a great day for Ireland.
Thank you very much for coming on the show.
I mean, you're a bit of an eventing geek just like us.
And it's time to get on with the show. Welcome, listeners, to the Acca Ratings Eventing podcast and the next episode in the Inside Badminton Series. The countdown is on. We are mere weeks away from the big one. The excitement levels are rising. I am currently situated in a very cosy office at Badminton HQ, and I have got two excellent guests lined up for the next episode in our Inside Badminton series. We're going to find out how it really works behind the scenes. So none other than Chief Medical Officer Sue Smith, lady with a very important role. Sue, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's lovely to be here.
It is so good to have you with us. You have so much experience, and we're looking forward to finding out exactly what you do. Alongside you, a man who I have actually interviewed in a podcast before, a USCA podcast, Tim Randle. It is very good to have you back. Vet Services Manager, aka VSM.
Hi, Nicole. Yep, good to see you here.
It is so good to have you both with us. First of all, let's get a little bit more insight into what your roles are, because they're two massively, massively important roles. Horse and human welfare, ultimately, is at the forefront of everybody's mind throughout badminton, throughout the sport of eventing. And both of you play a huge, huge role in that to make badminton a success. Sue, I'll start with you. Just tell us a bit about your experience, your background, and how you came to be Chief Medical Officer at Badminton.
Well, my background is I was an intensive care consultant working full-time in the NHS for 23 years, and then have metamorphosed into a trauma team leader at a level 1 trauma centre, looking after very major trauma that comes off the helicopters, etc. But with another career which I started by the back door in 1994, looking after the medical requirements of major events.
Amazing. So do you have, because you do lots of different sporting events, do you have any equestrian background, horses that have something part of your life?
No, I cannot ride, and I've been teased mercilessly by Ruby Walsh and Mitz Fitzgerald, who have all offered to teach me to ride because I can't.
I mean, you've turned down lessons from a couple of racing's greats there. We're going to talk a bit more about your racing routes as well a little bit later on. Tim, how about you? Because you've actually ridden around badminton as well.
I have ridden around badminton during the last century, indeed. Probably done lots of different things at badminton, from spectating and grooming to riding and vetting. So, yes, I've been coming to badminton for probably more than 30 years anyway.
And what about your veterinary background? Because you've worked, I think you were assistant veterinary delegate at the London Olympics. The job title there could be wrong. Was that right?
Yep, I was lucky to go to London and to Rio as well. So I've been to a couple of Olympic Games as a vet delegate. Yeah.
Worked with teams?
Worked with teams, worked with Team GB. And I currently work with the American equestrian team, US.
So how did sort of all of your veterinary experience lead you to this role at badminton?
Do you know, I ask myself that question frequently during my life. I'm never really quite sure how these things pan out, but I'm very grateful that it has brought me back to badminton in a different role, because when I stopped riding, which is about 20 odd years ago now, it was difficult immediately to not have that sort of close involvement with the sport. So becoming active as a vet has been a really good substitute for riding.
And an incredibly different insight at an event such as this. Sue, tell us a little bit about what your role involves on site at badminton, and also in the build-up to badminton, because it isn't just the 5 days of the horse trials.
So I am responsible for all medical services to badminton horse trials, which means looking after members of the public, the contractors and anybody else on site during the layup, which starts in earnest on the Monday, and then looking after the needs of the elite professional athletes, but also the amateurs doing the grassroots. And obviously there are potentially a number of trauma associated with falls with the rides. The public are an interesting group.
They're a law unto themselves, I imagine.
And because of COVID, events are much busier, and what is really interesting that there's a signal nationally that medical services at events are highly used. This is coming from Premiership football, where they've had some very well reported cardiac arrests during football matches, but this is occurring at other major events as well. It certainly appeared to be the same at Cheltenham Festival this year as well.
It's so interesting because it isn't just, eventing is a sort of a dangerous sport as such. There is a risk attached to it. But actually, when you come to an event such as badminton, there's tens, hundreds of thousands of fans. It is an enormous operation. How many people are in your team over the week?
There is approximately 80 medical professionals. We have a full-time prescribing pharmacist who deals with approximately 2,300 attendances. They may be very simple in the form of simple painkillers and plasters, but they go up to forgotten prescriptions, emergency prescriptions, and much more exotic medical consultations that the pharmacist can do quickly.
That's amazing. 2,300. I never knew that at an event. I would never look at badminton and think that at all. This, listeners, is why we are doing this show, because the insight is just something that hopefully you will go away and think, God, I never knew that about badminton. Tim, how about your team? Because just explain to us how it works in terms of your team of vets and what they do, and the vets that might be on site either in an FEI capacity or working directly for riders as such.
Well, the vets are probably divided broadly into two groups, and those would be vets who are here to officiate and oversee the competition as far as the FEI governing body is concerned and ensure the rules are applied fairly, etc. And then the other group of vets would be those who are here to explicitly look after the horses and ensure their well-being from start to finish. It's probably often said to be successful you need to have good people around you, and I'm really lucky with my role that I have a really, really good team of vets around. And it's interesting hearing Sue's comments about treating the public, because although we've got a really, really competent team of vets here throughout the week looking after the horses, there's one thing guaranteed to send them into a panic is if somebody comes over the radio to say there's a dog in distress in the trade stands, because they're all very good horse vets but not necessarily geared up with enthusiasm for going to see other species. And
is that something that comes under your team as well? Because actually you make a really good, I hadn't even thought of that actually lots of people bring their four-legged friends along. I imagine actually if it's a hot badminton that...
Yeah, I'm being slightly flippant because of course badminton has that covered. There is a small animal vet employed here to cater for small animal emergencies, so if we do get embroiled in a small animal situation, we can refer them quickly on to somebody who knows a bit more about it.
Fair enough, but it is a very, very key point. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how you sort of allocate all of your professionals on site, because there's obviously a huge amount of them. So I think you said 80. Tim, what sort of number would you be looking at from your side?
As far as the event is concerned, we've got a team of probably nearly 20 vets anyway, who would be here in full strength, certainly on the Saturday. But throughout the week, we've got vets here in the stables just in case there's any unexpected issues in the build-up to the competition. And of course, they're here and available 24 hours a day. So if there's anything during the night or outside of the competition itself, then there's vets immediately available. And there'll be other vets will arrive over the course of the competition week. Competitors will bring their own vets along with them. And by the weekend, we've probably got on site, I should think, a little veterinary convention of maybe 100 vets or so.
And how do you allocate all of the vets to make sure that everything is completely covered?
Well, the cross-country course is unusual at badminton for being so difficult to move around on cross-country days. So we have more vets on site probably than we would do at a normal event of anything approaching a similar size. And we divide the course up geographically into regions, and then we put vets strategically around those areas so that all of the fences are covered. And we have broadly 3 sectors on the course, and within each sector we have not only a number of vets ready to be deployed onto the course should there be an incident, but each of those teams of vets then has their own orthopaedic surgeon who's there as a specialist second opinion should there be some sort of major orthopaedic issue which requires more than one pair of eyes or somebody with specific experience in that field to be able to make a quick decision about the best course of action. And of course the vets then in turn are backed up by ambulances which are ready in each sector to transport horses should they require it, to get them back to the clinic area where they can be assessed further and if necessary taken on to hospital for further treatment.
And Sue, from your perspective, how does that work in terms of the allocation of all of your services?
So as far as the athletes are concerned, again, like Tim, we are divided up into sectors. So there is a central athletes medical centre for the Saturday where we can do any emergency treatment that is needed, including summoning a helicopter if it's life and limb. But each of the sectors has a paramedic on every fence or every nearby group of fences, because we can't drive through the crowd in an emergency if there's a fall. And I have applied the British horse racing requirements that all fallers have to be attended within 1 minute of the accident. So we can't drive across the course to get 1 minute response time. So there's a paramedic at each fence, and then with each sector there are 2 doctors, one at the main sector and one at the subsector, so at opposite ends of the course, that can have their own group of fences. And then in the middle, driven by an expert driver, is what we call a super doc, which is somebody who's an expert in pre-hospital care and can deal with any eventuality, whether it is crowd or athlete, because odd things do happen in the crowd, particularly if a horse manages to leave the course.
Yeah, absolutely. You make a very good point there. What about the topic of conversation, I guess, over the last couple of years in particular, has been pressure on the NHS, and it was something everybody was very, very aware of, you know, when restrictions were first brought in. Am I right in saying that all of the medical cover is externally sourced as such? There's no additional pressure on the NHS?
So there's 2 things here. So all the medical cover is extra to what the NHS local provision is. So there is no jeopardy to the local population whatsoever. And that's very important. We also try and be totally self-sufficient. Now that's obviously not always possible, because there is always something that might need urgent medical care. But we will do a lot of straightforward accident and emergency procedures here. For example, cleaning wounds, stitching, putting joints back into sockets, which we would do as a quick trip to A&E. Not that that is now quick at the moment. We're also got the problem that we're still operating on the NHS under COVID regulations. So although there's freedom for the public, it's not freedom for a medical team. So we will still be masked and gowned for any procedures. So do not be surprised if you see the medics wandering around in masks.
Because that is exactly what you're required to do. What about if the worst happens there is a major fall and all action stations, you know, everybody is there to do what they are trained to do? How does that work? Who takes charge in that instance? And sort of what is the differentiation between who takes charge?
It rather depends whether it's a horse or a rider injury, if it's a horse and rider injury. Priority is to get the right resources to the accident. And then we need scene safety, so catch the horse, make sure the scene is safe. The cross country will be paused, and then screens will go up to protect both the horse and its vets who are working at the horse, around the horse, and also the privacy to the rider.
And screens, Tim, are something that we often see at events all over the country. And fence repair is another point that I want to ask you about in terms of trapped horse. But actually, the teams are very, very good at putting that up. That doesn't necessarily mean that there is something to hide. It is simply giving everybody time, space, privacy to work at that point.
Yes, I think people are getting more familiar with seeing screens put up at, whether it's racing or eventing or wherever there's an incident involving a rider and a horse, and shouldn't panic at the sight of the screens, because it is simply to provide a bit of privacy to the patient, who at that stage is of unknown status, and it gives the emergency team the opportunity to work without the distraction of people filming them and taking photos or calling out to them to offer advice, which might be well intentioned. So yeah, the sight of the screen shouldn't cause unnecessary alarm. Unfortunately, most of the time when the screens come back down, the horse and the rider will be on their feet, and it will seem like it was perhaps an unnecessary reaction.
but it does make a massive difference. And the fence repair team, in terms of a trapped horse, I take it that would come under sort of your guidance or your team's guidance. But I've never failed to be amazed when you see it on screen and a horse might get trapped or get into difficulty, and the fences that look so solid are so incredibly quickly and expertly dismantled right before your eyes if the screens haven't gone up yet.
Yeah, I think that's the key, that the fences are big and solid and they look very solid, but the guys that put them together know immediately how to dissect them and take them to pieces. And so we've got the comfort nowadays that whether it's through a frangible device or whether it's simply through the course builder being able to dismantle the fences, that part of an entrapment can be relatively quickly resolved, and then the horse is either free to get up under its own steam, or if necessary, we of course have equipment on site ready to assist the horse to help him back to his feet and away from the place where he's caught.
And Sue, you mentioned a little bit earlier on that you'd adopted some of the guidance from racing. You work a lot in racing. I think you're Chief Medical Officer for Cheltenham as well. You know, you've had a really, really busy few weeks and a couple of months, I imagine, leading up to it as well. Just talk us through that. So what does that entail, and what has eventing learnt from racing?
Right, so unfortunately, some years ago, there were some fatalities, British horse racing. And since then, the infrastructure with compulsory pieces of kit and training and documentation, which is pertinent to the injured rider, web-based and password protected, has massively improved communication between all of those medical officers working at racecourses. And the standard at British horse racing has gone up hugely, as have the skills of all the team over time. This I put as one of my non-negotiables when I was appointed Chief Medical Officer here, that we would be at the standard of British horse racing with the same training and skills for all the medical officers that British horse racing has. And that's very important because communication on this huge side is a huge problem. And if you're not used to using, for example, a radio, quick, fast, accurate information is needed.
You mentioned earlier 1 minute response time to be seen by a medical professional. Actually, 60 seconds isn't very long.
It isn't very long. It's fine if you're driving at 40 miles an hour behind a set of British horse racing, either flat or national hunt jockeys. When you have a driver who's concentrating on driving and you just have to do the medical side. But here it would be impossible to get through 125,000 crowd, and we don't want accidents from the crowd who are blissfully unaware of what's going on.
Yeah, it's almost causing a problem in itself, isn't it? And adding a level of danger that you just don't need at that point. Tim, we touched a little bit earlier upon your sort of experience from a team perspective, and now working in this role, you're obviously still active in the team perspective as well, but how has that sort of impacted your approach to your role now, and what have you learned sort of that actually you didn't appreciate before perhaps?
It's important for me to remember that it's a equine equestrian competition. It's not a veterinary event, and therefore I shouldn't be disappointed when I ask our riders sometimes who was the vet at the event, and they say, I've no idea who the vet at the event was. Because, of course, we should hopefully largely be in the background and have very little to do. And it's great. I mean, fortunately, many years, it's great to be here to enjoy the sport and to support the riders, particularly if we have close connection with their horses. But equally, if we do have an incident, then it's satisfying in a different way to be part of a team that reacts quickly and efficiently and deals with it well, even if the outcome is sometimes a bit sad. But it's very reassuring to know that we've done everything to the best of our abilities and to a standard which probably is as high as any event in the world, I would hope. We all have, whether it's racing or eventing nowadays, we all have requirements as veterinary professionals to undertake regular training and CPD and qualifications which are perhaps a bit different to those which we would need in our day-to-day roles. And I think that's been a good thing in keeping everybody up to well above a minimum standard, so that the care that we provide is exceptionally good if it's needed.
And the whole point is, ultimately, we all hope that you won't be needed. We hope that you can get a chance to enjoy the brilliant competition at Badminton. But ultimately, you're there, if you are required, that you can step up and do everything that you are trained to do to the absolute highest level. Do you get a chance to enjoy badminton? Is that Sue's got a wry smile. I imagine you enjoy everybody going home safely on a Sunday night.
I'm afraid yes, and I will watch the badminton about a week later on catch up. However, I do enjoy the atmosphere. It's a wonderful place to be. You meet world-class athletes, horses, the teams that run the badminton, whether it's veterinary or medical or the ground staff, are just magnificent to work with.
They are an incredible team here. They do a brilliant job. Tim, how about you?
Yes, much the same. I think it's a magical place to spend the week, but like Sue, it's sometimes surprising when I get asked on a Saturday evening about such and such a occurrence on the cross country, and although I've been here all day, I may not have seen more than just a few minutes sometimes of the action, depending on how smooth or not the day has been.
It's work at the end of the day, isn't it? You know, you're there to do a job and to do it very well. What would your day at badminton look like, Sue? How early do you guys have to start? Because I imagine you are essentially on call.
So I will arrive between 7 and 7:30 in the morning, and occasionally there's a small number of patients already to be seen. Odd things happen overnight. We have odd accidents in the campsites.
Do tell more. That sounds like there's a story there, Sue. Come on, we won't mention names.
No, there are odd accidents in the campsites. People fall down. Let's do simple things. People fall down potholes. They have a bit too much of the happy juice, and we have to also realise that people come to this as a very desired event. So I have to be prepared for the live birth in the car park. We have heart attacks, we have strokes, we have people who turn up with severe chest infections because they think they're going to be all right. And unfortunately for some people it's on their bucket list in the last few months or years of their lives because it's such a desired event. So we have to be prepared for all comers, and I never know what's going to turn up next, and weird and wonderful things happen.
I bet you've got some stories. Please tell me they named the baby Sue.
They named it after a very well-known person, yes.
Oh, exciting. Right, there we go. I have to admit, part of you does think, you know, if you are, and obviously nobody plans to come to badminton and have a cardiac arrest or a stroke, but actually there are worse places from their perspective for it to happen, because you don't walk down the high street and have all of these medical professionals available to you. Actually, it must be a chance to really make a difference. And
you're absolutely right. I mean, catastrophic medical events at higher end events actually have a very good outcome, and this is well documented, but we just never know what's going to happen, so we have to be prepared for everything. Tim, have you ever had a birth in the car park?
Never had a birth in the car park, nor foaling even.
No. And anything else? I mean, your vets would get nervous if they got a call over the radio that there was something else that they needed to go to like that. No dog having puppies, anything. Any stories from your perspective that you look back on and you think, wow, didn't expect that?
Well, I guess we're lucky in a sense that our target audience are a more specific bunch of animals. The horses which we're involved with really are just the competition horses. So, of course, we do get unfortunate things happen, and particularly I feel for overseas competitors when they've travelled sometimes thousands of miles to get here, and the most trivial things can, as we all know with horses, just flare up at the wrong moment and cause you huge disruption to a plan which has been perhaps in place for months if not years. So I think those are particularly sad situations when a competitor has their sights set on the weekend and something pops up in the week that has to derail them. But no, we're lucky in a sense that we do just tend to get things that we can reasonably anticipate occurring at an event.
That's fair enough. What about sort of favourite moments? Is there a sort of a competition moment that stands out, or Sue, something that happened that you look back on and that's stuck in your mind? 'Cause how many years have you been Chief Medical Officer here?
So I've been Chief Medical Officer only here for about 7 years, but I started working as one of the sector leads in 2003, and then took over when the event needed to be compliant with the new regulations for crowds, etc. As the events got more popular, it has needed a huge amount more work on the medical side, so that occurred somewhat by default. However, have I got a favourite moment? I have to say, if you have a terrible accident, there's a good outcome. That's very nice for the team. Occasionally, you spot something in the crowd that is going to give them huge amounts of trouble, and they just happen to wander in, and you say, "Oh, I know what that is," and you send them off to the right person to be dealt with. That gives great satisfaction. But otherwise, I'm afraid it is everybody goes home safe on Sunday night.
That is a favourite memory. If everybody goes home safe Sunday evening, having had a wonderful time, then that is all we can ask for. Tim, is there a competition moment that stands out for you? You know, you've ridden here, you know what it takes to get here. There is so much emotion that goes into it. It's a long old journey to badminton. Is there a memory that particularly got you a little bit?
Well, like you said, it is a long old journey to get to badminton. I suppose it's probably not very imaginative of me, but Nereo's victory in 2017 would have to be a big highlight. It was such a big backstory to that, and it was, I think, probably got most people at the conclusion of the event.
I think you're right there. And actually, Sue, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, because Andrew Nicholson has been on the podcast before. He's spoken very candidly about it. His surgeon was here. He saw him when he came out of the show jumping arena. What kind of satisfaction? You must see so many outcomes that aren't what you would want, but actually to be able to see something like that must be incredibly special in a job that you are so passionate about.
I think it's very important. Again, it's team working, because Andrew's fall was on another event that this group covers, and it was recognised immediately and sent to a very good surgeon who dealt with it beautifully, and Andrew managed to continue his riding career. So that is highly satisfying. But if the person on the ground at the other event hadn't spotted it, the outcome might have been different.
Yeah, absolutely. It is one that I'm sure Andrew thanks his lucky stars on, and I know he's spoken about it very candidly. And actually, it was a moment when he did describe that actually was very emotional, because you know how much has gone into that, and you can see all of the work that has been done behind the scenes and all of the pieces of the puzzle that have fallen into place to have that happy outcome. So, Tim, thank you both so much. What are you most looking forward to this year? You know, we're a few weeks out from the event now. I certainly got goosebumps driving in. The grandstand is going up and the fences are starting to be flagged. What's the moment for you?
Actually arriving on the Monday, just starting to look round and start checking. The atmosphere is there on the Monday, and it's just a lovely feeling.
There's a buzz about badminton, isn't there, Tim? It's good to have it back.
Well, it's been such a long wait, hasn't it? I think this year's exceptional because we're all desperate to see it go ahead again, and the field looks stellar. So I think it'll be a great week of sport, yeah.
Stellar is one word to describe it. It is red hot, the badminton field this year. We cannot wait to see how it unfolds. Listeners, if you haven't already, make sure you get your badminton TV passes, because you will be able to catch all of the action throughout the week on badminton TV. And just after this podcast comes out, actually, there will be the cross-country course preview with none other than 2017 winner Andrew Nicholson and Eric Winter, our course designer. There is some more very good content coming your way as well. I might have a sneaky peek at that course tomorrow. Very excited. But look, Tim, Sue, thank you both so much. Listeners, thank you. Don't forget that this year, advance ticket sales only. So if you are thinking of coming to badminton, get those tickets booked, because you wouldn't want them to sell out and you miss out. Badminton is back. We cannot wait. And we are looking forward to hopefully having a very, very safe, happy, successful badminton horse trials presented by Mars Equestrian. Sue, Tim, thank you. Listeners, thank you as always. Thank you for listening to the Echo Ratings Eventing podcast.
Have a wonderful day, everybody, and I look forward to having you back with us soon.
Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more.
Listeners, we'll speak to you again soon.